to love my father. I hate what he's done. I hate the pain he's caused so many people. But knowing he's going to hear my voice and say these things, I know he'd be listening. I wish he'd understand how hurt I am and how much I wish he'd made different decisions, and how that if he could do all this and still have my love, like, it wouldn't have taken much just to be a decent human being, and he'd have me and my kids in his life and we would have worshipped him. I wish he'd just confess and let this all be done and let it stop affecting me. I was 17 and this has chased me my entire adult life. It affects my kids. It affects every single aspect of my life. And I knew this podcast would happen one day. And I just wish he would give Kristy and Anne the justice and the truth that they deserve.
I'm Ashlea Hansen, and you're listening to episode 13 of Dear Rachelle, a podcast by True Crime Australia. This is the untold story of Rachelle Childs, a 23-year-old who was brutally murdered. Her killer has never been caught. This is the first of a two-part interview with Kevin Steven Correll's daughter, Jazz. Now, she has some pretty strong beliefs about her father, particularly in relation to historic allegations for which he's been found not guilty. Jazz also believes her dad murdered Rachelle. These are only Jazz's opinions about her dad. She's come to these views through a combination of her own interactions with her father and witnessing his relationships with other people, including both of his ex-wives, the first being her mother. This, of course, doesn't make it proof of Kevin's guilt of any offences. These are only Jazz's opinions. And in fact, you will hear Jazz say she doesn't have any evidence that her dad committed these crimes. But we think it's important for you to hear her story. By the way, Jazz is her nickname, and for privacy reasons, we're not using her full name. Kevin Correll strenuously denies any involvement in Rachelle's murder and has never been charged. He has willingly participated in 3 records of interview with police and provided his DNA to investigators. A coroner presiding over Rachelle's inquest made an open finding. How would you describe your relationship with your father now?
We've been estranged about 4 or 5 years. There's been minimal contact between us. There was health concerns where we exchanged a few text messages that were civil, and yeah, I had concerns about him. But yeah, it's, I think after this is released, I don't think we'll ever speak again. And I'm okay with that. I feel like I'm hurting him right now, and it's not what I want to do. It's just I feel like I have to help with this because it's been 24 years of them not knowing. And I'm sure my dad would understand. I lost my eldest daughter in 2009 under very different circumstances. But if there was someone responsible, which there wasn't, it was medical reason, but if there was someone responsible and they'd evaded justice for a minute, I would be smashing the world up. And it's not okay that Anne and Kristy are still fighting for justice. I think it's so wrong. And I would hope that my dad, with the grief we experienced in the loss of my daughter, would understand that that's not okay for that family to still be going through this. Someone needs to pay. Rachelle died violently, and I can't imagine being in their shoes, how that must feel. You know, there's no one to blame for my daughter's death, but it's so unjust, it's so unfair. And to have someone that you know caused that horrific thing to Rachelle, it's just so wrong that they've walked free for 24 years.
What's prompted you to speak out now?
I feel like I have some insight when I hear certain things being said about my dad. Some very true. I think most of the things that are being said about him by people who know him, I believe them wholeheartedly. The best chance at getting him is for people to really know who he is. And I think I'm probably one of the best people to explain who he really is. A few of those years, he was protected in people's belief that Jazz wouldn't have him in his life if he did this. And I feel guilt for that. I also want it known that I don't defend him anymore.
Before we get into that, who are you? What would you like people to know about you?
I don't know, I feel like a very boring person outside of this. I'm a mum of 5 amazing children. I work in community services. And I'm very passionate about a lot of things, human rights and feminism. And yeah, I think my dad being who he is has shaped a lot of who I am.
How has your dad shaped you?
I don't think there's anyone who's been more influential in who I am as a person. I think you can trace every single detail about who I am. Every fibre of my being comes from him, whether it was the things I didn't like, I became staunchly against. For example, my dad is very, he's racist and homophobic and things like that. So I am staunchly against those things. Being that my dad can't seem to tell the truth, it's very important to me. Honesty and accountability are probably the biggest things for me, and it's how I've raised my children. Accountability is so important. I never told my kids that Santa was real or the Easter Bunny was real or anything like that, because I wanted my kids to know that they could always believe every single word I ever said to them, which is something I've never had with my dad. Everything he ever said, good and bad, I never knew what was real and what was true. Even the good things, like him saying he was proud of me, I didn't know if that was real. I didn't know if his love was real. And I think the only way that you can achieve that with your kids is to always be honest. So I didn't want them to ever think, oh, I'm lied about this. And yeah, so it's shaped who I am, especially as a parent, and the things that are important to me. I can't ever undo the harm my dad has caused his many victims. But I think because I couldn't speak out for so long, this is why it's shaped my life.
To you, who is Kevin Correll? Do you love him like a father?
So many of my friends were so envious of my relationship with my dad. Most people who met my dad loved my dad. He was, I often had a lot of friends saying they wish they had a relationship with their fathers the way I did with mine. Yet underneath I knew that he was a monster too. I've never been able to reconcile those feelings, and I feel a lot of guilt and shame that I've contributed to him having 24 years of good memories he didn't deserve to have. For a long time, I tried to have hope that he didn't do these things. Deep down I knew, I've always known, not in any way that I have evidence, I knew he did this. I knew he's done a lot of other things. But there was a hope as his daughter, as someone who experienced his love. There was a hope that it was all wrong and everyone had it wrong. But I know that's a fairy tale.
You said that you'd seen the evil your father is capable of. Do you have any memories of that?
I remember him hurting my stepmother. I do remember that. My mother had told me that he never hit her. I'd witnessed my mum being terrified of him my entire life. She was terrified. He's always scared her. He still scares her now. I remember being at a party and there was an accusation that she was talking to someone that my father wasn't happy about. And we were told to get in the car. And as we were in the car, I remember that she was banging on the car window and she had blood all over her face. And she was crying and he got in the car and left her there. Outside of that, there wasn't violent explosions ever. I sensed people's fear. I also saw a lot of people be compliant with his lies. And that's the one thing that it wasn't ever taught. He never told me that I had to go along with anything. He did the same thing to my kids. No one ever said you've got to go along with the lies, but everybody did. And when you see everyone compliant to someone, it's natural that we will call out a lie when we hear it. But with my dad, everyone falls into line. And I don't know how. And I think that dynamic is only possible when you're fearful. I can't explain how it came to be that dynamic. He wasn't controlling in the sense that anyone else would describe controlling, but I know when you weren't compliant or you didn't act a certain way, he punished you in a way that you couldn't speak to people about because you just looked crazy. It was sinister, it was calculated, it may be long after the fact, but there was a passive-aggressive way in which you'd be punished for stepping out of line. As I said, he never raised his hand, he never raised his voice. He was a very calm father, but definitely you would not describe him as an aggro father. He was very calm, very loving, unless you displeased him.
Tell me about the good times from your childhood.
I don't know why, but the good times are harder to talk about than the bad times. I think because in this environment, telling people he's evil is easier for me because I want to support Rachelle. Talking about how much I love my dad and the good things that most people wouldn't know feels horrible. And I've lost the ability to feel good about cherished memories I had with my dad. My dad's probably the funniest man I've ever known, and I hate saying that. I don't want people to think he's a good person who deserves to be defended, because I defended him for so long. But he was so funny. He was so much fun. We always joke that he was the fifth wiggle. He was always running around playing games, making up games. He spoiled us rotten. We went there once a fortnight and he had 2 days and he would fit every last minute with fun. I loved going to my dad. So I was, daddy's little girl, and some of my best childhood memories are with my dad. I loved him, I still do.
That's why this interview must be so difficult for you to do.
I think knowing he's going to hear this, I've talked about these things with people and therapists so many times throughout my life, and it's got to a point where I can be stone cold clinical and this happened and this happened and this happened. I don't think it's fair. I think he got 24 years that he didn't deserve, and I gave them to him. My dad's entire life has been me and my kids for the last 24 years. I gave him those years, and I feel a lot of guilt and shame. And I think he's been very lucky, and it's time to let it go. It breaks me that Graham passed without the justice he deserved for Rachelle. From everything I could see, he was a wonderful father. He loved his daughter. And she was taken from him. It's the cruelest thing imaginable. And I just wish my dad would be accountable. As a father, he's at certain periods in my life, he loved me very well. And he loved my children. But to me, my father is Jekyll and Hyde. He's caused us so much pain.
How hurtful could he get?
He once said it was my fault that my daughter died. That I was a negligent mum, and that I must have loved it because of the attention I got. It was mainly attacking me as a mother. I'd often say that, he was going to go for custody of my kids and take them off me. I don't hide from the fact that I have had a lot of problems over the years. And my kids have gone through a huge amount of significant trauma. I was not violent or abusive. I was neglectful because some days I couldn't get out of bed. And my kids suffered because of that. And that's another reason I let him in their life, because the same thing he provided when I was a child. He was fun. My children worshipped him. I never relied on my dad, but he would step up. He would turn up every Friday afternoon and I'm going to take the kids here and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I needed that with what was going on in my life. Was not in a good way in the early years of life. Just trying to hurt me as much as possible. And there was nothing that was too low for him. And then, it was like it was all forgotten. But on those occasions that he brought it up, he would, like our past fights, and he would bring up that, he didn't kill Rachelle. And I had apologised that I had said those things. But he never apologised to me for any of that. I never got a single apology. He's never been able to be accountable. If I talked to him about my pain, it was always, even when I accused him of killing Rachelle, it was always, when we'd discuss it later, it wasn't denials of doing it. It was that I was the horrible person for accusing him. And he always turned it around that I was evil and I was horrible and I was cruel. He never acknowledged anything he ever did.
Did he play the victim?
Always. Always. I was cruel. I was horrible. The papers were against him. The policeman was after him because he hurt his daughter. My dad, whenever backed into a corner, was the victim. That's the only time I'd see my dad make himself vulnerable. But it was make-believe. It was an act. So you would feel sympathy. A text message I received probably about 2 years ago where he acknowledged a lot of things. He didn't fully acknowledge it, but he said he was sorry for the ways he had let me down. Which is, I never got anything like that in my life from him. There was never any acknowledgement of anything. There was no apologies for anything until that text message. And it ripped me apart to the point I couldn't function for weeks because I've needed it for 41 years.
But yeah, his cruelty was mostly passive aggressive. I remember he used to record my boys, and there'd be a bribe in it for them, and they'd explain, but he would get them to record videos saying, "We don't want to live with you, but we want to live with Pa." And I knew it was because I stood up to him with some racist comment or some... Whenever he saw my feistiness, he hated that. He hated that I'm passionate as me, because I am as a person. When it comes to my values, I am very feisty, and I stand up. I can stand up for other people, just not myself. And standing up to him was hard in regards to me, but I could stand up to the other things that he said and did. And I could see how angry he'd get. He'd have a smile on his face and he'd be normal, but yeah, that would be my punishment for things like that. Or he often badmouthed me to my children. He would encourage them to make racist comments, gay jokes, things like that, and challenge their masculinity when they didn't. It was almost a taunting, that really toxic, to be a man, you must be these things. And yeah, it's definitely affected my kids.
From what you've witnessed with your dad, how does he attract women?
He's very charming, charismatic. He uses humour. He's he's very critical of other men. I think my dad views all other men as competition. It's very rare that he had close relationships with men. There were a few friends he had. He would criticise that, men want to go to the pub and drink and they don't get up and dance. My dad will get up and dance with anyone. He's always the life of the party. He's not been a big drinker throughout my life. I've seen him drink a handful of times and only get tipsy, drunk maybe once or twice. He needs to always be in control. He would use me and my children. And when I say use, I think some of the love he had for me and my kids was entirely genuine. But he knew that attracted people, that he was this loving, doting father and grandfather. And yeah, women, I saw them idolise him. It still blows my mind that my father gets the women he gets. They are all not only pure in heart, intelligent, loving and kind women, they're all drop-dead gorgeous. And one look at my father, you go, how? And yeah, he just wins them over. He lies a lot. I used to get very annoyed, his friends had mentioned stuff like, how he bought me a car. My dad never bought me a car. I was paying it off myself. But he didn't have to lie about what he did for me. He could have just told them what he did and people would still think he was wonderful. But instead he would say that he was practically raising the kids, that I wasn't coping, and my dad was paying all my bills and he bought me a car and doing everything. Now, I understand people like to talk themselves up and want people to see them as some sort of hero, but I don't know why he had to speak about me in such a degrading way. If I saw one of my children struggling, I would just want to be there and help fix it. My dad never, through those times, ever came and said, "Just what do you need? How do I help?" Never tried to get me any help. He used it for his advantage.
You're describing a man who some might think grooms people.
Yes, it's 100% grooming. And somehow he grooms others to help him.
How so?
He's never told me what I'm supposed to do, but I know. I can't explain that phenomenon. I don't know how that happens.
Can you think of an example that might explain it?
When there was an audience that I knew we had to act like the closest dad and daughter in the world. So we might be preparing for a party and he barely acknowledges me, and, you know, he might have the shits with me, and yeah, there was nothing. He wouldn't describe us as close at all. And then when people arrived, he lived his whole life for me. I was the most beautiful girl in the room, introduced me to everyone. This is my beautiful daughter. Even though he'd say things behind my back, that fed into it, that my daughter has all these problems, but I lift her up. He didn't do that for anything else other than the audience that were watching, because they think, oh, she's got all these problems and look at the way he builds her confidence. And I would immediately play into it. I saw partners go along with it when he would tell stories. I remember one partner who sat there through a story. They had gone on a cruise, a dinner cruise, and he was telling us at Christmas about this guy getting belligerent and causing a scene, and my dad said, you know, he helped kick him off the boat. My dad got in a fight with this guy, and then his partner told me when he walked away that there was the belligerent guy on the dinner cruise. And all of that happened except the part that my dad was involved. He didn't get up from the table. But she went along with his story that he was telling him, though it was with her. He was fully aware that she knew everything he was saying was a lie. She was there. But we'd all do it. We'd comply. I started noticing my kids do it, and that's when it really hit me, because it was okay for it to be normal for me. When I saw that one of my sons was punished because he was less compliant than the others, he would be treated in a very passive-aggressive way. He would be punished in weird, sinister ways, not a normal way that you would punish a child. It was psychological. It was making him feel less than his brothers. It was something I could accept for myself, but not for my sons.
What about the sinister lies? How deep do they go?
He always has a story to justify anything. So I was about 12 when my parents were sort of arguing for custody of me, and it's when I found out a lot of family secrets and found out about my dad's history. Dad got out in front of it and told me himself. He also told me some stuff about my mum, trying to turn me against her. Thankfully, Mum had already told me, but as I said, Mum never badmouthed him. And he told me that in the 80s he had been accused of a rape. I only knew of one rape. And he said that he was seeing a girl who was the daughter of a police officer, and he had cheated on her. And he sat there and almost welled up and said, you know, I don't want to be that person. I know my dad's been unfaithful to every partner. He said, I know that that makes me a really bad person, but she got angry and her father had me arrested for rape they didn't have the answers for. So this was a story I was fed about his rape charge. I also knew there was a case of armed robbery because my mum's brother my father attempted to frame my Uncle Greg for it. I knew that from my mum's family. I'd heard bits and pieces. No one went into details with me. I never knew that was an attempted rape. When I heard the full version of that, that floored me. I haven't been able to turn off anything relating to the podcast. I follow everything. I am constantly on Facebook watching everything that is said. And I knew I shouldn't have listened to the podcast before. So it was episode 5. And at the end, I heard the snippet of 2 rape victims, or the attempted rape victim and the punch bowl one.
So the knock at the door, I opened it and it was bam, instant. Balaclava, The knife was like held up here. He pushed me back.
I was walking down the hall to re-show him the lounge room and that. He pulled a knife on me.
He just came straight at me and it was just closed, hard fist.
Proceeded to tell me that if I didn't do what he said, he would kill my kids.
And I just went down. It was like, I just went smack down on the bed.
I did what he said and he raped me.
I remember thinking, holy shit, I'm going to die.
And I got to work. I was violently ill. I had to leave work, and my son left work as well. He wasn't doing well. My mum had told me bits and pieces. She knew nothing of it being a police officer's daughter or anything like that. I had suspicions that it was more than what he said because I knew he was a liar, but I didn't know how many had happened. But specifically when I heard the Gold Coast model story, when I realised the armed robbery, the way he tried to frame my Uncle Greg, I knew he tried to frame him and he left the business card. I'd heard that story so many times. But one thing that really stuck out to me in that podcast was the way she described, he kept saying money for drugs. And it showed me how sinister he was. My dad is completely anti-drugs. He's never touched anything. He views marijuana use as the same as heroin use. He thinks it's all disgusting. Completely anti-drug. But my uncle was a smoker. My dad would have viewed him as disgusting for that reason. And my uncle was a lovely man. He's passed since. Yeah, it made me realise that he went in there and he was so intent on setting up my uncle that he made out it was for drugs. And that's how sinister he'd get. And when you go back to the fingers, I think that's the biggest mistake he made, that he was telling all of us, not realising how much that was going to backfire on him. But yeah, I think he fully thought that his charm would make people not suspect him.
Have you heard him badmouth women in general?
Yes, always.
What are the kinds of things he says?
He used to call women moles a lot when I read that about the rape in the car. That shook me.
She called me names, and then I called her a slut. I think I called her a mole and teaser or something.
Because it's wordings he would use. But he makes insinuations that when women dress a certain way that they're asking for it. And, those very typical tropes of his generation specifically. I remember every case we'd hear big cases of sexual assaults and things like that. Brittany Higgins, all that sort of stuff. He would always blame the women or say they were lying, always. He was always on the side of the person who, didn't matter what evidence was there, they were always innocent.
How does your father view women?
He has the expectation that they are pure, kind, nurturing, soft, and anything outside of that, they deserve disrespect. As much as my father hated my ex-husband when he wanted to hurt me, he would say things about, me being a whore, and that's why he doesn't blame my ex-husband for doing the things he did.
Your father would call you a whore?
Yeah. But yeah, there is a certain way that he expects women to behave.
And did your mum stand by your father during these allegations back in the 80s?
Mum stayed with him. I definitely don't want to speak on behalf of my mum, who is definitely not, she's not supportive of me doing this. She's scared for my safety. She blames herself for a lot of what he got away with. And all I can really say is that she was very fearful of him at that time. And she did what she needed to do to survive. I know my mum believes he did it. He did both the rapes. I know she remembers one of the victims who showed up at subsequent trials of other victims. She remembers her in the court and how much it broke my mum to hear her screaming. He's done it before, he'll do it again. And my mum did not talk about this stuff to me until I started asking questions.
What about Elise? How did he treat Elise from what you saw?
Elise was very... It always felt like she was sort of on eggshells and trying to do everything she could for my dad. He didn't treat her well. She's the one that I have the story about, the bloody face. And, I didn't see a lot of violence like that between them, but I feel like the threat was always there. I feel like Elise was always scared of that.
I want you to hear how Elise describes some incidents of verbal abuse and threats allegedly by your father. And I'm interested to get your insights on those threats to see if that would be something your father would say.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes, he did threaten me. He threatened to, if I ever left him, he would hunt me down and find me. He would cut me up in little pieces, bury me on the beach in individual spots, cover me in lime so nobody could smell that there was body parts there. Yeah. And then there was another time we drove past Giroa Beach, and I'd mentioned as we'd driven past, I said, that's a really nice caravan park on that side. I said, what a lovely spot to have a caravan park, because you've just got to walk across the road and there's 7 Mile Beach there. Like, that would be a fun place to take a family, like, to go and stay there. And I said, look at all that bush there. And he said, yeah, look at all that bush there. He said, that'd be a good place to bury somebody. Just make sure you behave yourself.
I must add, Kevin Correll vehemently denies the allegations of domestic abuse levelled against him by his former wife. Do you believe that's something your father would say?
100%. I never heard threats like that. But I know that he's capable of that. I know that's how he's instilled a lot of fear in a lot of women. I know how terrified my mother is of him and other former partners of his. I remember reaching out to one in my 20s. Is
this the partner that your father was seeing at the time of Rachelle's murder?
Yes.
We're referring to her as Alice.
I'd reached out to Alice just because I absolutely adored her. And I never knew why they split up and what happened. I realise everything with Rachelle probably played a part, but yeah, I reached out to her at work, and I could hear terror in her voice, realising that I was contacting her. And she told me she couldn't have anything to do with me. And this was one of the most beautiful souls I'd ever met. And she was terrified purely because I was his daughter. And she thought he had put me up to it. She asked me not, when I said no, I just wanted to catch up. She said, please don't tell your dad you spoke to me. Please, you can't contact me again. And I knew something quite horrific had happened. Didn't know what. And I'd never asked him. Yeah, I know a lot of women are terrified of him. All the accounts these women speak of are 100% true. He liked to look at women. My dad, always turning his neck, looking at anything. But he didn't respect those women. I think my dad only respects a woman if she is a good wife and serves men and is compliant.
How do you cope with all these traumas in your life?
My kids are, I probably get the most emotional talking about this. I don't know how, with everything they've been through, that they're the most phenomenal humans. Just their sense of humour, their forgiveness. They're the most compassionate, beautiful human beings. And outside of that, I mean, they are more than enough, but my work is very significant to me as well.
Why is that important to you?
I can't undo what he did. I can't. But if I'm doing good, I want my DNA to be counterbalancing in some way. And I'm not Mother Teresa. I don't mean that in any way, but I don't want to sound like a martyr, but I think that it's very significant to me that I am always trying to prevent people being cruel and evil.
Did you choose that path because of your childhood?
I think so. This is what I think being his daughter has definitely shaped so much. And I think I am forever trying to do something that is more significant than being his daughter. I've felt worthless most of my life, and I think I'm always out to prove that I'm not him. I don't want to be known as his daughter. I want to be known as the person who helps people.
How much fear did you have to push through to be able to do this interview with me?
I think I would have had reason to fear if he knew I was doing it, and there were, he knew where I lived and there was an opportunity for him to get away with it. Yeah, I'd probably be more fearful. I've always... My dad had contempt for me, and I think one of the reasons he kept me in my life was because he'd used me as a tool, and because I was the mother of the grandchildren who were another source for him. I think he hates everything I stand for because, as I've said, I've built my personality around not being all the things I hate in him.
You've tried to be everything he's not.
Yes, and it severely disappoints him. I used to believe in order to get my kids that he could potentially hurt me if he thought he'd get away with it. I remember a few times going to his house. I'd have to pick something up or drop something off, and I would either pretend to be on the phone or I would be on the phone to a friend and very loudly out the front of his house, "I've just stopped in at my dad's, I'll call you back in 10 minutes. I just wanted him to know that someone knew where I was. And I know that probably sounds very dramatic. I can imagine his face as he hears me say that. But yeah, I know what he's capable of. And I know the contempt he had for me and how damaging I am. I think I hold up a mirror to my dad of all the things he hates about himself. I think my existence pisses him off. I think if I, for some reason, walked into his house and no one was there, yeah, he'd probably hurt me. I don't think he's going to seek me out. I don't think he'd show up where he thinks my sons could be. I don't think he's a danger to me. But I understand that most of my loved ones are terrified of me doing this today.
Are you doing this for any payback for your father?
Oh, God, no. No. I think the hardest thing about doing this is that knowing my dad is going to hear this and how much it would probably hurt him. I don't want to hurt my dad. I don't know why it's important for me to know that he knows I love him. I can't have him in my life anymore. I can't.
But I do love him and I'm grateful for everything he ever did for me and my kids. I am.
In a previous episode, you heard Kevin Correll's close friend and former partner, who we've called Marion, share her beliefs about why Jazz is estranged from her father and would speak out publicly against him.
All I can say is with all the things that his daughter has said, I know is very self-serving. She is into martyrdom. She loves people saying, oh, are you okay? Is everything all right? Sorry you're going through this. She is attention-seeking, and don't get me wrong, I do love the girl, but yeah, she would never have anything positive to say, and I've only got things that are positive to say about Kevin.
Do you know why she's such a staunch supporter of your father? Can you give us some insights?
I thought it had a lot to do with a lack of confidence, feeling isolated. But that attack on me, when she has always expressed to me that I'm a daughter to her, and I felt like I was hurting her, that I have not been in contact with her. I would never hurt that woman. But I don't know what he has said to make her make vicious comments like that about me. It might possibly be that I am not involved in her life anymore, but I've had nothing but love for her my whole life, well, as long as I've known her. I'm just blown away. This psychological damage he has done, and these are the things he says about me. To hear her say it, I honestly thought she was someone who would always be in my corner. That hurts. I'm not an attention seeker. This is the last thing I want. I wish I had a normal fucking dad that didn't have me in a fucking news station.
Coming soon on Dear Rachelle.
I think he wanted to kill her, possibly as punishment for rejecting him. My personal belief is that Rachelle was aware he was defrauding Camden. There were quite a few years that I know I protected him. He had said that Rachelle's fingers were cut off because she was dealing drugs for bikers. I remember just feeling like the blood had drained from my face the time he sat on my lounge and said, I've never said that. He'd said it to me multiple times. Exposing my dad in any way is what will set him off.
Dear Rachelle is a multimedia production from True Crime Australia. If you want to be one of the first to find out what happens next, go to dearrachelle.com.au. That's where eligible digital News Corp Australia subscribers get early access to podcast episodes and breaking news in our live investigation. And you will also find exclusive videos, interactive evidence, feature articles and more. That's dearrachelle.com.au. If you have any tips or confidential information to share with me, Ashlea Hansen, please send an email to dearrachelle@news.com.au. Our supervising producer and audio editor is Reese Gunter. Rachel Fountain is executive producer and audio director. Our executive editor is Sarah Blake. Our senior journalist is Patrick Carline. Video editors are Gillian McNally, Owen Yang and Stephen Woods. Picture editors are Jeff Darmanin and Kristy Miller. Senior camera operators are Daniel Andrews and Oscar Vieira, with sound design by Martin Peralta and Travis Evans. Thanks also to Greg Thompson, Eleni Paneras, Shoba Rayo, Faye Gould, Vanessa Graham, Hayley Goddard, Stephen Grice, Charlotte Karp, Tina Coggins and Harry Hughes. Special thanks to the Daily Telegraph editor Ben English. And Dear Rachelle would not be possible without the help and unwavering support of Kristy and Anne Childs, Mindy Wicks, Damian Loone and Rachelle's friends. This podcast series is hosted and investigated by me, Ashlea Hansen.